Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, where we draw attention to mental illnesses, the challenges of living with these conditions, and the strategies for having good mental health and wellness. And we're chatting today to bring a local perspective to this with Dr. Dimitris Genothanassis, Dr. G for short. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be part of this mental health awareness radio event, and I'll be more than happy to discuss mental health related issues.
And you're very qualified to do so because you are a psychiatrist. Start us off with, what is mental health when we say that?
So mental health is not just the absence of symptoms, it's defined more as a state of well-being where the individual has the ability or potential to realize his or her goals, to be able to work, to be able to connect with other individuals, and to be part of his or her community.
Well, when you define it like that, I think then this is something that everybody can relate to, Mental Health Awareness Month, because, we all have goals that we aspire to or have connections with people. What would the difference be then between mental health and mental illness?
So illness will probably be defined as the inability to succeed in any of these goals, an inability that causes a dysfunction, so to speak, in one of the major domains of human functioning, whether it's interpersonal, whether it's social or work related.
Well, in that sense then, for example, I'll use myself as an example. I used to have a big problem with procrastination. And the way you've defined mental illness, it almost sounds like severe procrastination might be a mental illness because it prevents you from, how did you define it? Excelling or achieving something in one of these four areas. What are your thoughts on that?
If the symptoms are severe enough that cause significant dysfunction in one of those areas, I would say that yes, it is considered a symptom of a mental illness. If it's a procrastination that just you rarely suffer from it and you eventually get things done, I wouldn't consider it. So where I would draw the line is not in the number or frequency or severity of symptoms, but whether the symptoms are affecting the individual's ability to function, whether it's at work or interpersonal relationships or other areas of day-to-day functioning, or at school if someone is at that age. For example, I saw a patient recently who mentioned that he had some problems with inability to focus and inattentiveness, and it would not be characterized as a mental health issue unless this caused severe academic problems, and in his case also interpersonal problems, because his friends would ask him to repeat what he meant, and then he would forget what the topic was all about. So this would affect his ability to function in at least two areas of his life. So again, where I draw the line is functioning, not the symptoms. Because someone might have a symptom but yet have found a way to cope despite having a symptom.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess the reason why I kind of use myself as an example is because, I mean, one of the things we hope to achieve in having this conversation is to really encourage people to talk about where they're at or what they're going through. What is a healthy way to do that without stereotyping yourself or other people? Or how can we have healthy conversations about mental health and mental illness?
I think the basis of a healthy conversation, in my mind, is trust. So if we trust someone, whether this someone is our friend or a family member, I don't see any reason why we cannot start there. If we have like someone that we really trust, we can discuss what's bothering us. But if this is not enough, if the answer we're getting from family members or friends is not satisfactory, or if we start discussing our problem and then what we get as a response is what kind of problems they have faced in similar situations, then that probably is not enough, because we need someone to listen without this someone discussing his problems, which is something that a mental health specialist would do. So I would probably recommend starting with a family member or a friend, but if that's not enough, then maybe taking it to the next level, which would be to ask for some professional help.
Okay, later on in our chat we will talk about where some of those resources are available. But it sounds like you're saying that one of the best things we can do for each other is when somebody comes to us and they do have something that's troubling them, is just to listen. Why is that so important?
Listen is love. I think we're so much used to responding reflexively to what we listen other person say that we forget how important it is to truly listen to the experience that someone has to discuss, to talk to us, to discuss with us. Because if we reflexively respond, we probably haven't really listened to what this other person has attempted to talk to us about. So one of the major differences between psychiatry and other medical specialties is that in psychiatry the primary motto that psychiatrists live by is the following: don't just do something, listen. Which is the opposite to what we've been told, right? We've been told that we shouldn't just listen, but we should just do something.
True. So the approach to psychiatry is the opposite of that.
I think it's the opposite, and I think it makes more sense, because if we don't listen, there's no way that we'll be able to be of any assistance to the person.
What are some of the, if I may ask, when you're counseling somebody and you listen to them, is it like they depict in the movies where they say, they have the person lie on the couch or be comfortable, and they ask them, tell me whatever, tell me how you feel about this? Is it kind of like guiding them? Is it like they say they portray it in the movies?
So the way they portray it in the movies is the way psychoanalysis initially started about 100 years ago by Freud, who was a psychoanalyst and a neurologist initially, who came up with this idea that if you allow the individual to freely associate, so to speak, and say anything that comes to mind without any interruption, eventually they'll be able to come to the conclusion or the core of what's bothering them. Now, this method is not used anymore because it's very time-consuming. I mean, for this method to work, you have to meet with the patient 4 or 5 times a week or 50-minute sessions, and this can take months and years. So it's not really used nowadays, but it's used in a modified version. So instead of having the patient lie down on the couch and have no eye contact, which is supposed to trigger this fantasy of the person being listened to without any interruptions, I think what we do in the modern day and age is that we sit across each other, and there is more interaction, more guidance. So it's still free association, but with some moderate guidance, if that makes any sense.
No, it does make sense, and I think it might put some people at ease knowing that they don't have to do all the talking if they want to get help. I don't.
For some people, talking can be like something that is a huge relief for them. For others, they find it very difficult to start talking about what's bothering them. One way or another, eventually we'll get there.
How can we, as individuals, kind of tell when we're just going through a rough patch in life and when we might be suffering from something more serious? Is it something innate that we feel inside of us that says we should reach out for help? Or how can we identify that we're either okay working through this problem on our own, or we should seek help from somebody else?
So I would say that this period of going through something, I think that going through a phase where we're bothered by something, I think this is a very useful phase, because it can be a phase where we're growing as individuals, because we're going through something unique or something that we haven't dealt with before in our lives. So if it's something that we're going through and we're still managing to function, again I'm using this word again and again, in other areas of our lives, even if we occasionally lose our sleep or we're falling behind a little bit in our things that we have to do, I would say that this is, if anything, it's a healthy response, because we're trying to figure out something. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this needs to be addressed by a professional. But then if this something causes us to have like persistent symptoms, I would say more than a couple of weeks of trouble sleeping, trouble eating, we're not able to function at work or in our relationship with our friends or our families, then that's probably a telling sign that it's more than just us trying to work it out or going through a phase.
Okay, let's get to the meat of this. What are some of the ways you would recommend that we can maintain good mental health? Maybe some common problems you see that, or bad habits we tend to adopt. What's your advice, Doc?
At the end of Freud's life, which he was like the psychoanalyst that I mentioned before, one of the most influential features in psychoanalysis, they asked him a similar question, like what are the most important things regarding mental health, and people were like, I think, waiting for some deep thoughts and hidden meanings, and asking him for some like specific clues as to how to maintain one's mental health. And he simply responded by saying that the secret to mental health is to love and to work. So I would say if we treat our day-to-day interactions with people with love, and we're able to function at work, so have some purpose of meaning or usefulness for the community, then these are probably the two most important things by which someone can maintain his or her mental health. So meaningful connections and meaningful work.
Well, we're chatting today about mental health, and we'll be back with more after this break.
Hafaday, Tito, and greetings from the Northern Marianas Humanities Council. This is Board Chairman Isa Ariola. We are so pleased to be celebrating our 30th anniversary this year with you. Our mission remains to navigate and explore the human experiences of the indigenous and diverse peoples of the Commonwealth by enriching their lives through research, dialogue, programs, and publications. If you have not yet participated in any of our council activities, make this your year. We look forward to welcoming you into our humanities family as we navigate the human experience together.
Hafaday, Pagunasakan, te celebra imina 30 años desde Managua, Northern Marianas Humanities Council. In Northern Marianas Humanities Council, manazuzuda gi comunidad para u abida ilinala todo Tauta Marianas. Tat kumia dudu gi man ilo information den tilingo por Marianas, i azudu gi mafatinas leblus an ottuna documentu, i azudu siha ginini exhibitioni differentes na programanya siha, zan hanagwagwaha conversacion gientuli Tauta Marianas. In kumbibida hamzu todo para indanyai i Humanities Council di actividad siha ni managwagwaha pagunasakan. Pues maila de tafana abisita, tafana ilie yesti siha na actividad that ta celebra hit. Sizus maasit.
Welcome back to Your Humanities Half Hour. We're chatting with Dr. G. Thank you for letting me shortcut your last name. How did you get interested in this field of psychiatry?
I got interested because from a very early age I really enjoyed observing people and how they were interacting with each other and how this interaction would change over time. And of course, like everyone else, I was interested in it based on the dynamics that were present in my family growing up. So as a child I would observe and then of course have some emotions which obviously affected who I am. And growing up again, I thought that this is something that I would really enjoy pursuing professionally.
Can we talk a little bit about the connection between mind, body, and either heart or spirit, and how what happens in one arena can affect the other?
That's a very interesting topic. After training in psychiatry, I did a fellowship, a one-year fellowship in psychosomatic medicine. So I think this fellowship helped me realize, because what I was essentially doing was seeing patients who were having mental health problems, but were also having physical, in quotes, problems. So this year shaped my professional experience in terms of forming, having this subjective view of things that, in my opinion, there is no such thing as physical or mental. We are just one. We are one human being, and our emotions and our physical part, in my mind, cannot be distinguished. So the moment we think of something, at the same time we have an emotion about it and we have a behavior about it. So it's a closed circuit whereby everything is connected with each other. And we see that a lot with physical symptoms. Like, for example, when we are happy, we tend to ignore painful sensations and we don't pay too much attention to it. But when we are sad or anxious, even the slightest physical pain, we're experiencing it as something way more severe, way more important, or way more debilitating than it actually is.
How would that play out, for example, for somebody who suffered abuse as a child as far as how it would affect their mind, their body, their heart, even as an adult years after.
Abuse or trauma doesn't just affect our mind, it doesn't just affect our behavior or our ability to trust each other, it also affects our brain. So it affects us on various levels. Our brains of people who have been abused tend to show some shrinkage, tend to show less interneuronal connection, so it affects our brain as well. And at this point, I'd like to add something an example that I'm using with my patients when they come to me after having multiply unexplained physical symptoms for which they've had like a whole body workup and various medical conditions, some of them very extensive or painful, and then as a last resort, they listen to the primary care provider, they visit their psychiatrist or the mental health professional, and one of their complaints is that everyone is telling them that it's all in their mind. So the way I approach it is that I tell them that it's not in your mind, but it's in your brain. And somehow, even though this is a very simple statement, it somehow causes significant relief to the person to know that it's not in their mind, but it's in their brain. I hope I answered this question.
Yes, you have, and I'm just letting it sink in because if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is it's not their imagination, it's something physically that has happened.
So they are accused by family and friends, and sometimes by their doctors as well, after doing extensive workup for all sorts of pains and aches or multiple unexplained symptoms. So they're made to feel either guilty for having the symptom, or even worse, guilty for feigning, for having a symptom that somehow they're gaining some sort of reward by having the symptom. So it's a huge relief when I'm telling them, because I believe it, that it's it's something wrong with their brain. So they're definitely more able to connect with me afterwards. I tell them this simple thing, which I think is true.
In our community here in the Marianas, you're relatively new here, maybe 4 months, but maybe
I've only been here for 4 months, yes.
Maybe it's the same around the world, but what would you say are the common stigmas or any cultural attitudes you feel that may need to be adjusted in order for us to address mental health issues better as a community?
In a way, we're all the same, but in other ways we're all different. So it's important to know our similarities when we approach one another, but it's also important to know our differences. So in terms of the local community here, I think what I've noticed in the 4 months that I'm here is that it is a very close-knit community, and I think this has pros and cons. I'm going to focus on the negatives for now, because the pros are maybe a topic for a different discussion, maybe around the barbecue. But I think that one of the negatives I've noticed is that people have a difficult time seeing a mental health specialist, because they either are afraid that this will mean that they're less than, that they're a weaker person, or they're afraid that somehow the whole island will know about their business. This is what I've noticed so far, that people are very reluctant to address their mental health symptoms. Not so much the younger generation, as I have noticed it with middle-aged or elderly patients.
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on all of these perspectives that we've shared today without also mentioning where people might be able to find some professional help here in the Marianas.
So I'm urging everyone to get an appointment with a primary care provider. So I think that if a friend or family member is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, I would say the second step would be probably to discuss it with their primary care provider. And I think just like the same way as they would discuss a physical, in quotes, problem, they should discuss a mental health problem. And their primary care provider should be able to either address it if it's within the scope of their practice, or their primary care provider should know how to reach either a mental health provider or another member who would be able to address this issue. So if they don't feel comfortable discussing with their primary care provider, I think their second best step would be to schedule an appointment with the Community Guidance Center, or CGC. I'm sure that they can get a lot of information regarding that. I recently had a patient who told me that just by getting the leaflets from Community Guidance Center was enough to ease her anxiety and depression, even before having the first appointment, the first face-to-face appointment.
Wow, that's wonderful to know that those resources are out there. Thank you so much for sharing with us during our limited time today. Any closing thoughts before we go?
It's been a pleasure. Approach each encounter with another human being with trust and respect. That'll be my closing remark.
And listen with trust and respect.
Listen with trust and respect.
Our guest today has been Dr. Dimitris Genothanassis. Thank you so much, Doc, for sharing with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
This has been Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.